Hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan. This is Recurring Insight, and for this video, I'm going to be talking about life from the loam. Life from the Loam is a cool case study because it's a dredge card that I think, if not plays particularly well, at least has an interesting set of incentives, and it isn't weak. I think that the call to action for people to improve dredge cards or improve the play pattern is to make them weak, and Life from the Loam plays pretty well in spite of being quite powerful.
Dredge is not a mechanic that's thought very highly of, and there's several good reasons for it. There's the incentive structure, there's the power level of it in older formats, there's how challenging it is to interact with the graveyard at a baseline in Game 1 settings. There's even the issue of, in the normal case or the fair case, or whatever you want to call it, how repetitive the cards are. Which asks the question, what would a good dredge card look like? Tough one to get right, but I think Life from the Loam is about as good as you're going to get, and not because it's weak, but because there are a few things going on here that are not true of many of the other competitive dredge designs, and something that makes it entirely different from things like Steakwynid and Golgari Grave Troll. Top of the list, just the dredge number's not that high. The difference between 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 is so different in terms of how efficient the card is in just flipping over your deck into your graveyard and playing entirely out of it, and that's really the most problematic element of dredge. Life from the Loam has a little bit of that, and it occasionally shows up in decks alongside some of those offenders, but at a rate that's a lot more modest for doing the bad thing than some of the other cards that commonly get top billing. Life from the Loam by itself doesn't really get you very far. You're not dredging for very much, and returning some lands from your graveyard to your hand can be a powerful thing to do one time, but often falls off of a cliff. So the question then becomes, well, what are you doing to optimize this card? And the thing is, you are playing with other cards that have to enter the battlefield, either things that are cheating lands in a play like Exploration, or a synergistic combination of cards that means the act of picking up specific lands and effectively tutoring for other lands is greater than the sum of its parts, like you see with Dark Depths and Thespian Sage and Legacy, or some more modest setups in formats like Modern. But the recipe isn't just keep flipping the cards over, you largely have to convert it into something, and that means that you're playing with other game objects, often casting other cards, and that's a space where other dredge designs commonly fail, where you're not really casting anything, you're just kind of milling over the cards and playing out of your graveyard. The last thing, and something that I would like to bring up, and something that kind of gives a defense to designs that are maybe not ideal or incentivize some not great things in competitive settings, is, does this card promote novelty? Are you playing with cards that otherwise wouldn't get played? And a place where the other dredge designs kind of collapse is that they all subsidize the same stuff, whether it's creatures like Prized Amalgam or spells like Dread Return. The details are different, but largely you're doing the same thing with all of these cards. Life from the Loam has subsidized cards like Forgotten Cave. If you look at formats like Legacy, things like Thespian Sage plus Dark Depths, one-ofs like Maze of Ith, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Glacial Chasm. These cards would not show up in this format absent something like Life from the Loam. And there's a question in all of these spaces of if it's worth subsidizing something that's kind of negative to promote these sort of cards. I think the calculus on that becomes a lot more palatable, a lot more in favor of doing the design once you're talking about older and higher powered formats. And so Life from the Loam, though it does have some of the dredge issues, it's not like it's completely absent from the design, has a lot of positive things going for it. It subsidizes novel cards that otherwise wouldn't get played, and does, in some form or fashion, make it a game that is on the battlefield. Not in an ideal sense. Cards like Exploration or Merit Age tokens aren't the easiest things to interact with, but it is a lot different than a sea of 0 mana creatures and 0 mana spells coming out of the graveyard. And for these reasons, I think Life from the Loam kind of stands out as a good way of executing Dredge in a way that's not weak.
Again, that was Life from Loam. This is Recurring Insight. Make sure you're subscribed to the Star City Games YouTube page so you can get notified when new content gets uploaded to the page. And also keep the requests coming. I might surprise you. I think a Dredge card doesn't play that badly. Who knows what surprises I have in store for you next time.